The what we call unspiritual man actually basically tries to focus on the needs, and he becomes good at meeting the physical needs in particular. Car, house, wife, whatever it is. Now the spiritual man focuses probably on the emotional needs. He's in the astral sort of sphere, so to speak. He becomes calm and conquers the extremes that would some just aim to conquer the extremes, others aim to conquer the variability. And they reach a satisfaction of contentment. Of course, you can have a contentment in the physical as well. You know, you feel you have got the right job, the right wife, the husband, the right house, the right car, and the right things, and the right holidays. But emotionally, you might be all over the place because you don't quite get on with the wife, and the job gives you situations in which you have success and failures, and so forth. From an emotional point of view, although you're still continuing to have the right job, the person who achieves an emotional stability may do it by taking the wider picture that this high or this low is just passing, this loss or gain, and therefore not focus on it particularly, simply a mix. You can go into a higher sphere and find a calmness on the causal plane. Those that trust in God are not needing to cause the future. They are trusting God to do what is good and lovely and right. So they are calm, causally speaking, in that they're not anxious to achieve anything. They are trusting. Do you see, you don't need to go through all three stages. You could simply go through the third, the causal one from the beginning. Because if you're happy that it's all in God's hands, then the physical shortages or abundances, it's all completely right with God. You're not upset about it, you're calm about it. And the emotional ones, you just look at it and say, oh well, yes, there's no need to be anxious or to be over-elated. This is just all part of the wonderful will of God. And on the causal, well, there's no need to desire or press for anything else, because I'm trusting Him that He's unfolding all things correctly. The Buddhist may still the mind without being particularly thankful or loving or joyful. In other words, he holds himself in a dead-end situation. He's not suffering, and that's true. but he's not living either. Living is creating, enjoying happiness, peace, hope, love. In the extreme, you could say the Buddhist approach is oblivion. True, it's not a misunderstanding, a misconsciousness, but it is a lack of consciousness, deliberate cutting off of consciousness, because consciousness is seen to cause suffering. In other words, the pursuit of no error does not achieve life. The pursuit of no misunderstanding can be achieved by death because there's no consciousness. But that is not the joy of living, not the peace, not the love and the creativity, not life eternal. The Buddhist equanimity is on the physical and emotional, mainly the astral plane, astral and, which includes the mental, but it's not on the causal, because of course the causal is creativity, and an equanimity in creativity needs an assurance that the creativity is good. That can only be attained by faith in a power that guarantees it to be good. In other words, our trust in God. So the Buddhist technique will give you an end of suffering, but not life. It gives you unconsciousness, not life eternal. And the unconsciousness, the equanimity, by simply controlling the mind, cannot last. In the end, it needs to be assured of cause, which cannot be attained without knowing God. However, God being infinitely complex, from our perspective at the least, it's not possible for us to do that. He gives us a solution, which is to trust in such. And it is that trust in God, trust in what we want to know to be God, that is our way, our pathway to life eternal, to equanimity, even in the causal, creative sphere, level of heavens, if you like. By not anxious to achieve anything on the causal plane, I mean not uncreative, like the unconscious equivalent of dead person is, but on the contrary, creating in absolute faith and trust that the master of the show, God, has all things in hand and is guiding even your thoughts and what your creativity is. It's not that you're not an independent being, but you're in such trust that that all will be well, because he actually rules all. He delights in your individuality and giving freedom to it. because your individuality is trained now to be in automatic harmony with him. And hence your freedom is not a risk. You know it's not a risk. So you can delight in relating to God and others of the host of heaven individually, without harm, and with great creativity. You see, this is a fullness of life, and life eternal, not simply a lack of suffering. It's flowers and fruit in the garden, not just a garden clear of weeds, bare earth. We could say then in some sense that the scientific world deals with the deals with the physical needs and so on. The astral or emotional world is dealt with by psychology, philosophy, which Buddhism really falls into, a sort of understanding of the emotional. Suffering is very much on the emotional. Pain is on the physical, and on the causal is lack of meaning, or meaning, the meaning of life. You need meaning, you need purpose. And you can go to transitory purposes like on the physical and astral plane, but they are all passing. You need a causal purpose that is anchored to God in particular, in that God is seen as everlasting and consistent, reliable, has an integrity, holds together through time and so on, is eternal. So there's a calmness in the physical plane when you achieve something. For a little while you're satisfied. I've got my new car, I've got this wonderful wife, or I've got this fine new job, and whatever it is, physical. But it fades. There's a view on the astral, emotional level where there's a peace, there's a joy, there's a calmness, but it fades. There can be a joy, an equanimity on the causal level, but not anchored to the eternal. So you have a meaning to life which is not consistent with that which is eternal. Creativity, hope, joy, peace, love, consistency. The list is, as usual. If you're meaning to life, for instance, you might want to be great general. Well, obviously this is not entirely consistent with a lot of other things in creation, is it? So you are powered by meaning, your meaning to life, but it won't give you a long run life eternal equanimity. It will be transitory because it's not anchored to the eternal. therefore not causally stable, not an equanimity, an eternally reliable meaning to life. That can only be what we mean by definition to be by God. And if that isn't your definition of God, then there's always a better one. And that's the one you should be going for. Thank you, Dad. As a note, can I add that it's not that the Buddhist has not found a meaning to life. He's found a meaning to his practice of avoiding suffering. His goal is to achieve the avoiding of suffering, but it's not actually achievable. And live. Not without, well, something pretty miraculous, namely God. So the answer is not to avoid living, but to, in some way, have the assurance of God. Well, you can't have the certainty of God because you don't have the mind of God to grasp that, but you can trust in God from simply, obviously, an observation of the fact that you're alive to date and really not of your own creating. I mean, where did you come from? How did you come from nothing? And how did the universe come about? Why are you experiencing all this life of the N years that you have behind you? So that can give you an inclination, a desire and a trust to trust in God. This reliable source of being and protection and stability into the future. Quite simply, we trust in him. The Buddhist has a meaning to life. The Bodhisattva realized was not enough, because you must at some time come up against a spiritual reality that you need a meaning that embraces all. You cannot be endlessly happy and content with enlightenment except you share it with others. And that, of course, is a great causality of meaning, the great causality of meaning that embraces all. You need to earnestly take the Bodhisattva vow to its full conclusion, which is an immense, endless creativity. Quite simply, oneness is not attained by an individualistic spiritual perfection. It is an eternal goal, one that you and all life, including our Heavenly Father, is ever moving towards. It is what life is, unbounded, eternally creative, more and more what we find to be harmonious, wonderful, complex, staggeringly varied and magnificent without end. All that our God, our Heavenly Father, personifies. And what we mean by knowing God. And you cannot have life eternal in the fullness of life and its meaning without that, by definition. Thank you, Dad. Well, if you think about it, it becomes clear that even on the physical plane, you could get all the way. You could be a very caring type of person, in the sense of you do things well and understand the physical world. You know how to build houses, make cars, grow crops, whatever it is your specialism is. You become an expert in your worldly field. Or you might, on the astral plane, perfect loving kindness and understanding, compassion, help, and your joy is stabilized by such purpose. Just as the man on the physical plane, his joy is stabilized by being a good builder, a good musician, even a good dad as regards bringing up kids that seem to be right and okay in life. Or you might, as in a sense you would think religion would have made clear, you can do it on the causal plane. You can choose to trust in God. You're looking for the highest meaning to life. Well, the highest you can conceive of, by definition, is one that relates to a conceivably most wonderful, infinitely wonderful person, God. So you could immediately start on that plane if you so chose. You do not need to work through each of the three planes. You could do. But you could gain full enlightenment in any one of them. Thank you, Dad.